The sight of that parade of broken dead had left my eyes so sotted with their tears I longed to stay and weep. But Virgil said, "What are you waiting for? Why do you stare as if you could not tear your eyes away from the mutilated shadows passing there? You did not act so in the other pits. Consider, if you mean perhaps to count them, this valley and its train of dismal spirits winds 22 miles around. The moon already is under our feet. The time we have is short, and there is so much that you have yet to see." "Had you known what I was seeking," I replied, "you might perhaps have given me permission to stay on longer." As I spoke, my guide had started off already, and I in turn had moved along beside him. Thus I answered as we moved along the cliff. "Within that cavern, upon whose brim I stood so long to stare, I think a spirit of my own blood mourns the guilt that sinners find so costly there." And the master then said, "Hereafter let your mind turn its attention to more worthy matters, and leave him to his fate among the blind. For by the bridge and among that shapeless crew, I saw him point to you with threatening gestures, and I heard him called Gary del Bello. You were occupied at this time with that headless one, who in his life was the master of Altaforte, and did not look that way, so he moved on." "Oh, my sweet guide," I answered, "his death came by violence and is not yet avenged by those who share his blood, and thus his shame. For this he surely hates his kin, and therefore, as I suppose, he would not speak to me, and in that he makes me pity him the more." We spoke of this until we reached the edge from which, had there been light, we could have seen the floor of the next pit. Out from that ledge, Malebolge's final closure lay outspread, and all of its lay brethren might have been in sight but for the murk, and from those dead, such shrieks and strangled agonies shrilled through me, like shafts but barbed with pity, that my hands flew to my ears. Of all the misery that crams the hospitals of pestilence in Marima, Valdicino, and Sardinia, in the summer months when death sits like a presence on the marsh air, were dumped into one trench that might suggest their pain, and through the screams putrid flesh spread up its sickening stench. Still bearing left, we passed from the long sill to the last bridge of Malebolge. There the reeking bottom was more visible. There high justice, sacred ministress of the first father, reigns eternally over the falsifiers in their distress. I doubt it could have been such pain to bear the sight of the Aegean people dying that time when such malignance rode the air, that every beast down to the smallest worm shriveled and died. It was after that great plague that the ancient people, as the poets affirm, were reborn from the ants, as it was to see the spirits lying heaped on one another in the dank bottom of that fetid valley. One lay gasping on another's shoulder, one on another's belly, and some were crawling on hands and knees among the broken boulders. Silent, slow step by step, we moved ahead, looking at and listening to those souls too weak to raise themselves from their stone bed. I saw two there like two pans that are put one against the other to hold their warmth. They were covered with great scabs from head to foot. No stable boy in a hurry to go home, or for whom his master waits impatiently, ever scrubbed harder with his currycomb than those two spirits of that stinking ditch scrubbed at themselves with their own bloody claws to ease the furious burning of that itch. And as they scrubbed and clawed themselves, their nails drew down the scabs the way a knife scrapes bream or some other fish with even larger scales. "Oh, you," my guide called out to one, You there who rip your scabby mail as if your fingers were claws and pincers, tell us if this lair counts any Italians among those who lurk in its dark depths. So may your busy nails eternally suffice you for your work. We are both Italian, whose unending loss you see before you, he replied in tears. But who are you who come to question us? I am a shade, my guide and master said, who leads this living man from pit to pit to show him hell as I have been commanded. The sinners broke apart as he replied and turned convulsively to look at me, as others did who overheard my guide. My master then, ever concerned for me, turned and said, Ask them whatever you wish. And I said to those two wraiths of misery, So may the memory of your names and actions not die forever from the minds of men in that first world, but live for many sons. Tell me who you are and of what city. Do not be shamed by your nauseous punishment into concealing your identity. I was a man of Arezzo, one replied, and Albert of Siena had me burned, but I am not here for the deed for which I died. It is true that jokingly I said to him once, I know how to raise myself and fly through air, and he, with all the eagerness of a dunce, wanted to learn. Because I could not make a Daedalus of him, for no other reason, he had his father burn me at the stake. But Minos the Infallible had me hurled here to the final Borgia of the 10 for the alchemy I practiced in the world. And I said to the poet, Was there ever a race more vain than the Sienese? Even the French, compared to them, seem full of modest grace. And the other leper answered mockingly, excepting Strica, who by careful planning managed to live and spend so moderately, and Niccolo, who in his time above was first of all the shoots in that rank garden to discover the costly uses of clove, and excepting the brilliant company of talents in which Casia squandered his vineyards and his woods, and Abagliato had displayed his intelligence. But if you wish to know who joins your cry against the Sienese, study my face with care and let it make its own reply. So you will see I am the suffering shadow of Capoccio, who, by practicing alchemy, falsified the metals, and you must know, unless my mortal recollection strays, how good an ape I was of nature's ways.